I am glomming onto conglomerates. Why? Because for one thing, I love the story of how they were formed. And the other thing is because they just look really cool. Whether it's a puddingstone or whether it is a Gowganda Tillite or something else, conglomerates are really cool. Conglomerate comes from the Latin. Not that I'm a Latin scholar at all, but I do have Google. So con, meaning group, like congregation, so a group of rocks, and then glom means to gather together into a ball, or even just grab. That's why I grab onto conglomerates. I don't have that many because I'm not the type that just stockpiles anything that I like. I have a few samples and I'm going to show you those. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how they're formed and the difference between, like, for example, a puddingstone and a Gowganda Tillite. One way I like to think about conglomerates is to picture a riverbed filled with chocolate chips and craisins and maybe also some like oats that you'd use for oatmeal, and then a nice stream of liquid peanut butter flowing down into all that and glomming all of those things, grabbing all of those things together, tumbling along, wearing down the sharp edges until you get some kind of rounded clasts or pebbles, C-L-A-S-T-S, clast or pebbles, at least 2 millimeters big or bigger. You get these clasts that are held together by, okay, not peanut butter, they get held together by silica or maybe silt, some kind of sediment, because conglomerates are a sedimentary rock. It's just that they have been glommed together and you end up with these pretty amazing rock specimens. So let's say that you have some red jasper pebbles or clasts, and you have some pebbles of black flint or chert, quartz pebbles, 2 millimeters or bigger, and you also have this silica that is gradually over time just filling in the cracks and hardening and being compressed. What do you end up with? You end up with conglomerate, and then when it gets kind of broken apart and tumbled along in a fast-moving stream, then it gets rounded and you end up with something that people say ooh and ah when they find it, because, well, like in the case of puddingstones, it's gorgeous. Or in the case of a Gowganda Tillite, it's also gorgeous, just in a little bit different way. And then there's the Sharon Conglomerate, and there are other kinds of conglomerates and tillites, but they're all conglomerates. And we glom onto them, don't we? I mean, we really like them. Now this is an example of a puddingstone, the kinds of conglomerates that I've been talking about here a little bit. So you see here the quartzite material, and you also see the red jasper there and a little bit of quartz there. And so basically you've got the quartzite, which is the light material, which is a sedimentary material. And then you've got the goodies basically in the pudding, the red, so that would indicate fruit or whatever. That's how it got its name. So what you have is a lot of pebbles in a stream, a fast-moving stream, because these clasts, that's what it's called, that's a clast. It has to be kind of worn down a little bit, the rough edges knocked off, and then the other material comes in, sedimentary comes in, and there's some compression and all that. And anyway, you get a puddingstone. Now, this is not a very good example, at least as far as it's not a beautiful example. I found this one in a farm field in central Indiana. I found this example in the same field in Indiana. And this, of course, is a much nicer example. It's got the goodies in there, the pieces of flint or chert, and it's just the contrast that really makes the stone pop and makes it a really good example. The red jasper, if you don't have the red jasper, then it's just sad, that you don't have it. Again, what you've got is a lot of little pebbles getting glommed together, grabbed together, and then through whatever compression, sedimentary processes that are entailed, you end up with a big chunk, and then it gets broken up into smaller chunks, and then it gets carried away by this or that, a stream, you name it, and you end up getting a beautiful puddingstone in central Indiana. Two more examples of conglomerates are these two beauties.
And again, you're thinking, okay, at least 2 millimeters. Oh yeah, absolutely, at least 2 millimeters. This is the Sharon Conglomerate. You find a lot of this in Ohio. So if you go to Cuyahoga Falls, you'll see a lot of this there. I dug these up in my yard in northern Ohio and probably other places as well. There is a lot of this kind of material. One thing I think is kind of cool about these conglomerates is there are all these quartz pebbles. And these quartz pebbles sometimes get just eroded out, moved out, bumped out. And in a lot of places where you might go hiking in northern Ohio, you'll find a lot of these little pebbles, like so, just laying on the path. And what I end up doing if I'm in lake area or someplace like that, I pick up a lot of those pebbles, because when you are using your tumbler, that adds a little bit of volume to what you've got in there, and it actually, while it polishes down the quartz, it's also helping to polish down whatever material you have in there in addition to the quartz. So that works out really well. A little bit better than the ceramic beads. I mean, you can do the ceramic thing, but this is practically the same thing. That's free. Another example of a conglomerate is a Gowganda Tillite. Now, this particular one I didn't find myself. Whenever I go on a rock hounding trip, if I have some extras of something laying around, then I throw them in the car and I figure, you know, I might meet some people in the parking lot at some really beautiful beach, and maybe they've found some things, several things, and they only need one or two, and they're willing to make a trade. So sometimes I throw some things into my car that I would be willing to trade to other rock hounders. Something I like to trade are geodes. Now this one happens to be a very nice one, and I wouldn't get rid of this. It's got a double terminated quartz crystal in there, among other things. It's a beautiful specimen, but I have a lot of geodes, and so when I'm out traveling and I think I might run into some people that'd be willing to make a trade, then I just throw a few geodes or whatever in the car, and it's kind of fun. So the last time that I did that, my grandson and I were on a trip. We were up around Lake Michigan, and we met these two ladies in a parking lot. They were meeting up to do some rock hounding. And the one lady brought some examples of a Gowganda Tillite. And when I brought out the geodes, those ladies were pretty impressed. And in fact, what the one lady was going to do is give this one to her friend. She had more than one. And she decided instead she'd give one to her friend and then also trade this one for a very nice geode, one that's actually considerably bigger than that one that hadn't been broken open. So there was still a little bit of mystery involved. So that's kind of a fun thing, but I love the Gowganda Tillite, and even though I didn't find this one myself, I still love it. It has a very prominent place out in my front walkway area, so that when people come to my house, they see this and they see some other beautiful rocks, and they know that they're at the house of a rock hound. Not that most people care. I mean, I know that you all know this, that you want to show people a rock that you've just really been excited about, that you just found, or a fossil. And sometimes people are polite enough to look at it, but you can tell they're not really interested. Now this is my favorite Gowganda Tillite. I totally love the size of this particular piece of granite that's embedded in it. Let's see, is it 2 millimeters? Of course it is. So this one I found on a trip with some of my family members. We were on Lake Huron, and of course that is the place to find Gowganda Tillite. So those are some nice examples of some conglomerates, and I hope this has been fun for you. It's been fun for me, just getting these things out in the dead of winter and talking about rocks.
All right, this baby is going to go back out into the cold. This one's going to go back up on the shelf where it belongs. Hopefully, if you don't have any conglomerates, you will get out there and look for some and find them and enjoy them. Hopefully, as much as I do, if not even more. This is Tim Talks About Rocks, mostly. Glad you tuned in.